What's going on, guys? Sunrise Sports and MMA here. I want to talk about Dana White today. One thing's for sure, anything related to the UFC, you more than likely hear or see Dana White involved, right? When we think about the breaking news, developing the fights or the fight cards and posting that, he typically will go on Instagram Live or it'll be on a UFC platform, and you'll see him put wrap the titles across the winning fighter's waist, or of course we see him on the dais or podiums, either promoting or discussing the event that just took place. But I also wanted to look at who could be the potential successors here, right? We have a couple of names that we've heard about over the years, but we haven't really seen who they are, or you get glimpses of them. There's really not that many interviews out there. They're not really the faces of the UFC. And a couple of those names that come to mind are Hunter Campbell and Sean Shelby. And I think I've heard Joe Silva's name come out as well. So what do these individuals represent to the UFC and, of course, by virtue, Dana White? Well, it turns out that Sean Shelby is essentially the matchmaker for all events. He's been with the UFC 20 plus years and joined when his organization WEC was acquired by the UFC at that time. So he's been there. He's one of the most long tenured employees, at least from what I can tell. In terms of Hunter Campbell, his story is an interesting one. He joined the UFC originally in 2006 as an intern. He actually holds a law degree and was an attorney for his father. Now, his father's firm. So his father actually worked with the Fertitta brothers and the UFC brass, and that's where the connection to Dana White began. So a couple of years go by, and he then becomes legal counsel for the UFC. Back in 2017, he was there for about 2 years, and then he was promoted to chief business officer. And that's the position he's held for close to 7 years now. So the way it looks like, and some of the online searches are hinting at Hunter Campbell at some point taking the helm of the UFC. So I also said, well, how old is Hunter Campbell? Well, it turns out he's 40 years old. There's not really an exact age for him online. And then I go back to, again, all the different fighters that are also considered faces of the UFC and direct employees. You have your Daniel Cormier, you have Michael Bisping. Obviously, we have the face of the commentary booth in Joe Rogan and John Anik. Paul Felder just signed an extension, so he'll be a part of that group long term. And I'm thinking that the UFC's approach to this, once Dana White decides to step down, is that we're going to have two figureheads. We're going to have someone probably like Hunter Campbell leading all of the backstage initiatives, and he might be in the ring here and there. But I don't think the UFC's done a good job of promoting him as that successor, at least as the face of the UFC on the business side. I do believe that the UFC might look to someone like Daniel Cormier, potentially Paul Felder. They just signed that agreement, or even John Anik, right? I could see them going with someone relatively younger, which is why I'm inclined to choose Paul Felder as the guy that might be on the dais, might be the one announcing a lot of these fights. And I think that's going to be the long-term UFC, right? They're going to put one of the ex-fighters in the role of kind of company ambassador, and he'll do all of the PR, he'll be on the podcast, and I think obviously Hunter Campbell will be behind the scenes for the most part with Sean Shelby. And again, Sean's also up there in age, so who knows what the matchmaking decisions will look like, but that's my take on it. I'm curious what's your thoughts, questions about what the future of the UFC will look like post Dana White. More so from the who will be making the business decisions and who will be potentially the ambassador or face of the UFC when it comes to what we see currently. Till next time, Sunrise Sports and MMA out.